Hare Krishna. Please accept my humble obeisances, everyone. Today we have His Grace Gopal Bhatt Prabhu with us. Prabhuji was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in 1971 at Detroit, USA. From 1973 until 1976, Prabhuji served as a Sankirtan leader for Cleveland, Detroit, Dallas, and Chicago. He was a temple president in Los Angeles from 1977 until 1980. Currently, Prabhuji serves as the chair of the GBC Strategic Planning Team of ISKCON and co-chair of the GBC Organizational Development Committee of ISKCON. He is one of the visionaries and founders of this GBC college and has been teaching at the college since its inception in 2015. He serves on the advisory board of the college and is a member of the college core team. We are honored that he has taken time out of his busy schedule to share his wisdom on the topic leading change with us. Thank you very much, Gopal Bhatt Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhubhaya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. It would be nice, for me at least, if everyone could show their beautiful face by way of activating the video. I think that would be nice. We will start with just some spiritual thought. Give me a moment. So can everybody see my screen?
Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so this is a letter from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. What I would like before we begin this is that everybody settle into their seat, stop fidgeting around, and get into a place of pure listening. Pure listening. Okay, thank you. So, I am overjoyed to hear that your enthusiasm for chanting is increasing. As our contaminations are removed by chanting, the Lord's form, qualities, and pastimes will be revealed to us in the holy name. There is no point in making a separate effort to artificially remember the Lord's form, qualities, and pastimes. The Lord and his name are one and the same. This will be understood clearly when the coverings in your heart are removed. By chanting without offenses, you will personally realize that all perfections come from the holy name. Through chanting, the distinction that exists between the self and the gross and subtle bodies is gradually effaced, and one realizes one's own spiritual form. Once aware of the spiritual body, as one continues to chant, one sees the transcendental nature of the Lord's form. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual form of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's form. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual qualities of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's qualities. Only the holy name reveals the spiritual activities of the living being and then causes him to be attracted to Krishna's pastimes. By service to the holy name, we do not mean only the chanting of the holy name. It also includes the other duties of the chanter. If we serve the holy name with the body, mind, and soul, then the direction of that service spontaneously manifests in the sun, like the sun, in the clear sky of the chanter's heart. What is the nature of the holy name? Eventually, all these understandings spontaneously appear in the heart of one who chants the holy name. The true nature of Harinam is revealed by listening to, reading, and studying the scriptures. It is unnecessary to write anything further on this subject. All these things will be revealed to you through chanting. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So I would, Prasanatha Prabhu, that's you, right? I haven't met you for a little while.
Yes.
Yes. So I will send this to you, and then you can send it to the college participants. Okay. So my first, it's actually in the form of a question because I do not know exactly what you have covered in your class so far. I just want to confirm that you have already examined this document called Organization and Intelligence. Has this been reviewed with you in previous sessions? Yes or no?
No.
It has not. Okay.
Not.
Okay, so we are going to review this first. Can everybody see it? And I'm going to expand the typeface a bit. So is it clear to everybody?
Yes.
Okay. I was meeting with Giriraj Swami some time ago. Actually, long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. And we were talking. And I was telling him what I was doing and taking his advice. And at that time, he told me a story. I wrote up that story in the form of this document, sent it to him to confirm that it fairly represented what he had to say. And this became an important document for the strategic planning and the future forward of the movement. I'm gonna read this to you carefully. You please listen to each word. It's very, very important document. So this is called Organization and Intelligence. The Giriraj Maharaj writes, we remember Srila Prabhupada's last days with us and our last exchanges with him. Srila Prabhupada was in Vrindavan then, And we didn't know how long he would be with us. He was so weak. He would just lie in his bed and speak only with great difficulty. We felt any word Srila Prabhupada uttered might be his last. One night I was sleeping on the roof of the Gurukula building, and around midnight, one devotee woke me. Prabhupada is calling you. Prabhupada is calling you. Immediately I got up and went down to Srila Prabhupada's room. I did not know what to expect. Why did Srila Prabhupada call me? What did he want to say? The silent intensity in Srila Prabhupada's room heightened my anticipation. Is he going to give us his final instruction? Srila Prabhupada lay in an internal state of consciousness. I waited in the silence. Finally, Srila Prabhupada asked me, do you think this movement will go on without me? I replied, as long as we are sincere and chant Hare Krishna and follow the regulative principles, the movement will go on. Srila Prabhupada listened. Then again, with great difficulty, and ever so softly, Srila Prabhupada responded. He uttered the words, organization and intelligence. I was startled. Later, I considered the significance of Srila Prabhupada's pragmatic reply. Although sincerely chanting 16 rounds and following the regulative principles are the basis of Krishna consciousness, intelligence and organization are also required, especially to spread Krishna consciousness and fulfill Srila Prabhupada's and Lord Krishna's mission. So, we should take a moment to reflect on Srila Prabhupada's legacy. I like to think that there are three very important legacies. I'm grouping them together because there are more than that. And I'm going to speak briefly on these three legacies in order of importance. The first legacy is Srila Prabhupada's books. It is highly likely that 200 years from now, Srila Prabhupada's books will remain. There have been millions of them distributed. They are all over the internet. Whether the BBT remains or not, I believe his books will. There are some challenges with Srila Prabhupada's books. There's arguments about the editing that took place. The BBT is not really organized for the long term. It's somewhat splintered across the globe. Somewhere around 50 years from now or so, Srila Prabhupada's books will move into what is called the public domain, meaning right now the BBT has the sole right to publish, but in 50 years from now, anyone could publish those books. That's how copyright law works. So exactly what will happen with the BBT, we're hopeful. that 200 years from now it exists. We cannot say that for sure. But his books are going to be here. Srila Prabhupada's legacy number 2. Just as we have the book Bhagavat, we have the person Bhagavat. Srila Prabhupada's example, this is why we call him Acharya, one who does not just speak precept, but one who exemplifies that, is a critical legacy for the future of our movement. In this case, this legacy, number 2, is not quite as secure as the books. The institution, the ISKCON institution, has never directly supported the creation of stories about Srila Prabhupada. Although we do have some very, very dedicated and wonderful people who have written about this. In this regard, I'd like to just speak for a moment as a sidebar. I suggest you all get the book, if you do not have it already, that Giriraj Swami has just recently written, and that is I Will Build You a Temple, the Juhu Story. This book will give you direct insight into how Srila Prabhupada thinks, the actions that he took at certain points in time. You will have a very practical understanding, an in-depth understanding of his divine grace. And it is actually one of the best books ever written of Srila Prabhupada. Back to our legacy number 2. Most of the books that have been written have no institutional long-term plan. When the authors leave this mortal world, whether these books stay in being published or not sure. We have the statement of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, where he stated that there were at least 7 or 8 substantial books written about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that over time, actually, most of them disappeared and are no longer even available, cannot even be found. Chaitanya Charanamrita, Chaitanya Bhagavat, they managed to survive. So it is not impossible at all to suggest that things fade away. So that legacy, number 2, is a very important legacy. Remember, why are we talking like this? We're talking about our future. We're talking about change going out into the future. Of course, the majority of our time will be spent on how to create positive change. We should also understand that there's a lot of potential for negative change. Legacy number 3 is ISKCON, and all that ISKCON comprises. Within ISKCON, there are multiple legacies. The legacy, for instance, of deity worship. Srila Prabhupada started and initiated the highest level of deity worship, as an example. But ISKCON, as a legacy, will it continue? And will it actually continue in such a way that it is an organization that is pleasing to Srila Prabhupada? Remember, he is the founder Acharya. So it is not so much whether it is pleasing to us, is it pleasing to him? ISKCON actually has a fair amount of danger in it. We should be awake and aware of some of these dangers. Srila Prabhupada was awake and aware of these dangers. First of all, he took his books and he did not give them to ISKCON. He gave them to a separate organization. He saw in his lifetime largely the dissolution of the Gaudiya Math as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had conceived of it. Yes, there are vestiges of the Gaudiya Math, there are individual temples, there are many great souls involved in the Gaudiya Math. I am not criticizing Gaudiya Math devotees, but from an organizational point of view, the thing dissolved almost as fast as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati disappeared. Don't think that ISKCON can't disappear in 200 or 300 years. Or change enough, negatively change enough, such that the organization no longer directly serves the precepts and the directions of Srila Prabhupada. So we are thinking future. We are thinking Srila Prabhupada's legacy. We are thinking, what does ISKCON have to do to thrive? And let us not just look at the externals. Oh, the movement is growing here. Oh, the movement is growing there. We're talking about the standards of devotional service, of pure devotional service. So it's a very, very important topic. And it relates to change, because that's the topic that we're speaking about today. We need to create relevant, important change in our movement. So when you have these Zoom meetings like we're having now, do you pause for questions and comments, or what? What is the policy? I'm not sure.
How you like, Prabhuji, you can conduct.
Any questions on what I've spoken about so far? Why don't you key them into the chat if you have any questions or comments, and we'll then pause to hear them. And then in the meantime, we will move on to our next item. Give me a moment. So this is going to be a little exercise that we're going to do. As part of, I shouldn't have actually brought it up yet. Let me just say a little bit of a prologue. Leadership has numerous duty responsibilities attached to it. Leadership means, among many things, one of those things is that a leader has to be a future forward thinker. You have to spend in your current day, in your current week, in your current month, a certain percentage of time in the future. Leaders are leading. Leaders are moving us forward. If the leader does not have a vision, a clear vision, and of course, leadership in ISKCON means a clear vision of what Srila Prabhupada wants, then how can you actually lead? You cannot actually. You can lead us astray more easily than you can lead us down the path that our founder Acharya wants us to be on. But thinking of the future and leading us down that path is required to be a leader. Many devotees, I'm not talking about anybody in this Zoom, I'm just talking in general, and it's not just devotees, people of the world, do not spend a whole lot of time thinking about the future. They're thinking about their duties today. They have demands placed on them today. They may be in charge of this project or that project or this temple or this aspect of the temple, and they've got things that have to be done. If I were to show you my schedule today, you would see that there's hardly any open time the entire day from 1 a.m. all the way to 7 p.m. Hardly any time open. And I'm sure that's the case with most of you, or even all of you. And when we live from day to day, duty, 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 things to do, things to do, things to do, and do not take the time, in fact, squeeze the time, create the time in our schedule to think about the future, we are missing a critical element of leadership. You have Srila Prabhupada when he started the first little temple, 26 2nd Avenue in New York City. This facility was about 300 square feet. Typically, your living room that you live in is probably bigger than that. $60 a month in rent and a little apartment behind the temple. Yet when he printed up his business cards, and remember, he had just come from India a year and a half earlier with $6 in rupees. So he had $6 worth of rupees, but at that time, there was no capacity to even exchange them into dollars. And on his business card, he had ISKCON, founder Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, centers throughout the world. So we want to be thinking into the future. So right now, what I want you to be thinking when we talk for this session that we're in right now, I want you to be thinking somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to as many as 100 years from now. Most of Srila Prabhupada's disciples will leave this mortal world within the next 10 years, the remainder within the next 20, or maybe a few beyond. And may they all have long lives. Most of Srila Prabhupada's grandchildren are well into their 40s and 50s. For those devotees that decided to show their picture, you can just see that we have some people that are 38s, some peoples that are 45, some devotees that are 30, like that. 50 years from now, most of today's grandchildren, they'll be gone. And as one generation moves forward after another, we lose something. We lose the institutional memory. We lose the fundamental instructions on a practical level that keep the movement going. So now we're thinking 50 to 100 years from now. That's how I want your mind to be in that space right now as we examine this document. So this we call the skyscraper skeleton. This is a term that Srila Prabhupada used on occasion. So the skyscraper skeleton. As soon as Srila Prabhupada established a beachhead in his initial efforts to spread Krishna consciousness in New York City, he created ISKCON's first corporation. As ISKCON grew, he added to the administration of the society at every step. As one of those important steps, Srila Prabhupada wrote, I have formed this GBC for that purpose, to keep the devotional standards at the highest level and at the same time to manage a worldwide organization. Later he wrote, now I have built the skyscraper framework. You fill it in nicely. And 12 days later he wrote, I have built the skyscraper skeleton. Now you all intelligent American and European boys and girls fill in the spaces nicely in good taste. Do not deviate from our high standards. The set of instructions Srila Prabhupada gave us to accomplish the effort of filling out the skyscraper skeleton are complete as it relates to principles. And let me just stop for a moment. You are all leaders of some sort. So I don't know all of you personally, and that's to my deficit. And but you're all leaders of some level. And because you've joined the college, it indicates that you have an interest of taking in more and more responsibility. So just imagine if you were asked, and I should say that you should ask this of yourself, to write an essay on what are the fundamental principles of Krishna consciousness and of ISKCON, that ISKCON should run by, that Srila Prabhupada, in his own words, in his own directions, in his own examples, what would those principles be? That would be an important exercise for you to do. And that would help you in your growth. So the set of instructions that Srila Prabhupada gave us to accomplish the effort of filling out the skyscraper's skeleton are complete as it relates to principles. Furthermore, he gave us some of the specific structures to accomplish this. Example would be, well, he told us to have a GBC. Yet Srila Prabhupada did not give us many of the details to fill out this skyscraper skeleton. Rather, he said, we must perform this service. So ISKCON has become a truly global organization with a wide portfolio of congregations, temples, projects, activities. Yet the structures and the organizational elements that are in place have not kept up with the significant expansion ISKCON has attained. More so, there are other aspects of organizational development that are sorely missing in ISKCON today. Here I said 20 years, but actually I said want it to be 50 years. And maybe 100 years. So I'm just kind of changing this here real quick. 100 years. Mentally, place yourself into the future. At least 50 years from now and even more. And maybe 100 years. What difficulties will arise if there is no development of the organization? What are some of the issues we face today that could dramatically hurt ISKCON in the future if we do not find solutions for them soon? What danger points do you see in your future forward mind's eye? These are basically 2 points, okay? What difficulties will there arise if there's no development of the organization? And what are some of the issues that we face that if we don't solve them, they're going to hurt us into the future? These are these 2 points that we're going to ask you to spend time. We're going to spend 5 minutes of quiet time so that you can give your future forward thought process and get it moving. And you take personal notes on what you see in these 2 areas. I'll go over those 2 areas again. After 5 minutes of meditation on this and taking some notes, Sanatana Prabhu will bust you up into groups of 4 or 5, and we'll spend 10 minutes sharing in those small groups. And I'll tell you more about, just a little bit more about how those groups will function once we just spend our 5 minutes of quiet time. We have quiet time, you're taking notes, you're thinking seriously about the future. Your mind has moved out of the present, out of your present duties. You are perceiving a time 50 years from now, 100 years from now. 2 points. What kind of organizational structures are missing and are going to be needed as this movement continues to grow? Second point, what kind of problems are we facing that if these problems are not solved, they're going to very much hurt us into the future? Is everybody clear on these 2 points to think about? So I have 6:08. By the time I'm done speaking, it'll be 6:09. We're going to take 6 minutes for you to think. That will take us to 6:15 Pacific time, which I think will be 6:45 IST. Begin your meditation, quiet, taking notes, deeply thinking, prayer about our future. Devotional volition. If Srila Prabhupada that just simply thought, yes, this is just going to happen, why did he place the BBT in a separate entity to protect his books separately from ISKCON? Why did he do that? So it's an important point, good point, yet at the same time, it does not detract from the potential that ISKCON may or may not be around 200 or 300 years from now, or even 100 years from now, in the form that Srila Prabhupada wanted it to be. Takes the action of all ISKCON devotees, both leaders and followers, to make that happen. So, okay, I see that Vipina Bihari Prabhu, you are the administrator. We want to send everybody in groups of 4 or 5 into their breakout sessions. In those breakout sessions, I'd like you all to share with each other. We'll run for 12 minutes, not just 10 minutes. And everybody gets a chance to share. But the first thing that you do when you get into your breakout room, somebody volunteer to be a note taker, take good notes on what everyone has to say so that you can make a short presentation when you come back about what the group had to say. So whomever you appoint, whoever volunteers, they're going to have 2 duties, taking good notes, and then when we come back, giving a short report, a 1 or 2 minute report on what everybody had to say on these 2 topics. Okay. So Vipin Prabhu, if you can put everybody into breakout sessions, you don't have to put me into one. I'll just wait. And let's put them into it at this point.
Okay, Prabhuji, I'll assign automatically, and then you can come out or you can go in any room. Will that be okay?
Okay. Yes. And then keep track of time. We want everyone in the sessions for 12 minutes.
Chakravarti Prabhu, you will have to move to the room. Go in, Prem Prabhu. Harsha Govind Prabhu, you came out of the room.
Hare Krishna. Vipin Prabhu, what?
Prabhuji, I have sent you to room. You have to accept that. You have to accept on your mobile. You have to select join.
Hare. Okay.
Okay. Okay, very good. So we'll have just short reports. Please make them short. We have 5 reports to go through. So let's hear from room number 1 first.
Sasri Prabhu, you can share.
Yes.
Yeah. So we are representing the room number 1. The first question is regarding what are the difficulties will arise if there is no development organization structure. So there are three points we have written in that. There is no legal hierarchical structure is not clear. So like whatever the policies, what are the laws made by GBC and other things, they are not properly applied in the line, in hierarchical line. It is not properly applied. So application is not done. The first point is this. Second is solid internal auditing committee is not there. And the third point is communication is not done properly between the leader, between the all the positions. So communication gap is there, a lot of. But 3 points are there. And then other question was, what are the some issues we face today? If you don't find solution, they will going to hurt us. The first issue is our leaders, they are attached to the position like president, vice president, or GBC, or secretary, or zonal, whatever is the position. So because of that position, we have a competition between leaders. We are not welcoming other leaders in our area to do preaching. We are stopping each other. So that is hampering our preaching and growth in the world. Maybe a preacher has a capacity to preach in 10 countries, but he is having a limited area to preach. He cannot go to other area because other area people will not welcome him. So there is lot of scope, but that scope is limited because of there is no proper system, no training between the leaders, and the attachment is there. Because of attachment, we don't allow other people to come. The second point is philosophical confusion. There are many instructions of Srila Prabhupada on many issues which are 2-3 statements. So that confusion should be cleared by GBC or ISKCON. We have to find the conclusion, like there is a Jiva fall down. There are 2 statements, but till now we don't know which one is the conclusion. So if you don't find the right conclusion for all these confusions, philosophical confusions, so that will create problem in the future. The third one is after 10-20 years, Prabhupada disciples are leaving. So we have to plan succession planning. There is no succession planning, but the future leaders, how they will be trained and they can become qualified to become the initiating gurus. And the fourth one is transparency among the leaders. Dealing between leaders, transparency is not there. And proper planning, team planning is not there, missing. So if you don't start making team planning, so that will also create problem in the future.
These
Yes,
are
Prabhu.
all excellent points. Thank you so very
Yeah.
much.
Yes,
Group
Prabhu.
number 2.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So first, we wrote down about the missing organizational structures, what is missing right now. So we do not have structures to develop good relation among devotee leaders, treating each other with respect, which potentially leads to offenses, divisions and factions. Then we do not have systems to have devotees who can dedicate themselves full time to the cause of the institution. Currently, the third point, we are also missing structures which can ensure deep study of Srila Prabhupada's books. And next point is, we don't have, the local leaders are not accountable towards the top management. They can do whatever they want, and top management do not have the time to really look into. And another thing which is missing is leadership succession. And issues, if not solved, will lead to further problems. So first is offenses will increase, leading to factions and divisions. Secular Hindu practices creeping into ISKCON, making it into an apasampradaya. Using logic and objectivity to solve the problems rather than relying on Srila Prabhupada's instructions. In short, just Googling the solution. Fourth point that we came up with was, fifth point, deviation in the name of innovative preaching. So that's an issue we need to solve, and expansion without quality leadership.
Excellent points. Again, from group 2, let us hear from group 3.
Hare Krishna. So Prabhuji, of course, we have not categorized exactly, like, I just wrote the points which devoted has spoken. So one thing was spiritual and management standards are quite often compromised at the local or execution level, and sometimes are quite often not monitored or not rectified. Second thing was regular organized Sangha of leaders and devotees with Srila Prabhupada in the center as the founder Acharya. Prabhupada's position, Prabhupada's words, Prabhupada's practices, that is lacking and should be followed if ISKCON has to be one entity to avoid fractions. And then third point was Srila Prabhupada books, conversations, talks, and his standards be the center of ISKCON. So Prabhupada conversation with the basis, it will stop deviations. And then fourth was unclarified and undefined roles and models of individuals in societies. For example, the Varnashram system, or example, role of women, or etc. There's in the society. Then fifth was the lack of trust of ISKCON members in leadership, and quite often to the GBCs, like local leadership and the global leadership. And then sixth is dealing with independent devotees, who create groupisms and fractions. So how we can deal with them? Either can we make alliances with them, collaborate with them, or we can make them further independent. Then seventh point is multiple opinions on same subject matter. This was also spoken by in room number 1 also. For example, fasting on Vishnu Tattva Appearance Festival, whether Ekadashi, or grain prasadam. So it should be put on paper and circulated. And then eighth point was clarification on sensitive subject matters from Srila Prabhupada books. Like where Prabhupada has used certain words or phrases which may not be well understood in the changing times at present. The ninth is guru-disciple relationship, whether Siksha, Diksha, or the relationship with the management. And then 10th was the harmony between ISKCON India and rest of the world. That's also, we felt, an important point. And last was standardized legal and philosophical documents which are available for ISKCON and ISKCON affiliates.
Wow. Big long list, all very important also. Group number 4.
Hare Krishna. So I will read out our group's points. First is that, of course, we didn't differentiate between the two questions in the answers altogether I have. So first is that Prabhupada teachings need to be continue to be in center, philosophy, and through culture, so that it stays. Otherwise, there will be too many factions, groups, fragmentation. Second is there has to be very nice education and training before appointing officers. Otherwise, we'll have continued incompetence and chaotic management, and devotees will get frustrated under incompetent managers. Third is next 50, 100 years, many children would be born in ISKCON families. So there has to be opportunity to educate and engage them. Otherwise, we lose a very good chunk of population, and they will lose their opportunity of human form of life. Fourth is that ISKCON is weak in attracting intelligentsia and academics. So if we attract academics people, then they will write and author papers and books which will help future generation to know that ISKCON is stable in science, in philosophy. Next 50, 100 years, we don't know whether food will be pure. So much countries, only meat is being sold everywhere. So ISKCON needs not just farms, but some way to have pure food to offer to devotees if it is not available in the market. There may be possibility of wars in the future, 50, 100 years. So ISKCON will need a location to keep its devotees safe. And if governments are atheist and unfavorable, ISKCON will also need some security systems and resources to keep the devotees safe from governments and wars. There may be scandals in the future in religious organizations because of which donors may not give funds to ISKCON as they give now. So ISKCON needs a good projects, good source of money and source of resources so that it can sustain. And if Varnashram continues to be less developed, then we cannot do mass preaching. We'll only do pocket preaching. So if you want to go mass, Varnashram has to be developed. So those who will not follow all the process of morning program, still they can be included in ISKCON as a member in Varnashram. As we go forward, every city will have multiple centers and leaders. So there has to be good organizational structure under the GBC. Otherwise, we'll have too many conflicts and whole time will go in just solving conflicts and not much preaching. ISKCON PR in government and other societies is very weak. So this has to be there so that ISKCON can reach to higher level of the society. ISKCON has to adapt to ever-changing technology and business systems. Otherwise, we'll become backward. And internal purity of leaders, there has to be a system to maintain and check it. Otherwise, when leaders are not pure, then we cannot expect good standards. And there has to be a system to check and rectify deviations. As soon as they start somewhere, there has to be a system to check and rectify deviations. Otherwise, after a few years, we'll have a very different movement. And in unity in diversity, this is a very important thing that people understand. We are all individuals, even though we follow the same formula, same process. So this should be well established. Otherwise, we will remain only neophyte, always fight kind of situation. That's all. Thank you.
Wow, excellent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 points. Wow. Okay, group 5. You're not coming through clear enough, Prabhu.
Okay, I'll just come near the window.
Okay.
Is this better?
Yes, it is better.
So some issue.
Seems like we lost him. Okay. Once he returns, we'll stop whatever we're doing and hear from him. So. I have conducted this exercise with 4 classes of the GBC college. This is the 4th time. I would say that there are a number of things similar to what was accomplished in these other sessions. And at the same time, I would say that this, what I've heard so far, of course, I very much want to hear from group 5 when Prabhuji returns. But I would say that this is one of the richest or even the richest list of issues and problems that I have heard from prior college sessions. It demonstrates that you, as a group and as individuals, have an awful lot of clarity of the problems that we are facing. And that is, of course, a very healthy sign. In other words, if you don't at least have an awareness of difficulties, why would you ever work toward changing or correcting them, right? You have to first understand the problem. Did Prabhu come back?
Not
I
yet.
saw the screen share. Huh?
Not yet.
If need be, I can speak for our group. Looks like Prabhuji
Oh.
might take some time.
Okay, then go ahead, Madhava Prabhu.
Thank you. I don't have all of the notes because Prabhuji was keeping them, but I have some of them. From the organizational developmental standpoint, some of the points we had were the lack of educational institutions in the movement, particularly for younger generations. We have a lack of cohesive legal entities, which lead or could lead very easily to fragmentation of the society. There's some inefficiency in getting the message of the GBC to the ground level devotees. There's a big gap between what the leaders talk about and do and what's happening on the ground. There's minimal organizational transparency, which can greatly affect the organization, not even in 20 years or 30 years, but in just a few years. And connected to that, there's a very inefficient kind of feedback loop, a very inefficient OODA loop for leadership. Then some of the issues that we're facing, lack of cultural congruence within the society, lack of educational and cultural congruence. And there needs to be systems in place to ensure the spiritual standards of the society. Prabhupada talked about boiling the milk often. We see a divergence of opinions or division amongst leaders, particularly at the moment we see highlighted between Indian leaders and international leaders. This is a very dangerous, I guess, time or precedent. And there's some issues, at least I believe, I noted this one, with operational kind of transparency and operational culture, where the end justifies the means, whichever way that saying goes. The means the end justifies the means. We do whatever we want, saying it's for Krishna, basically. Then another long-term issue is the global kind of environmental disasters. As an organization, we should be prepared to deal with those internally and also as an institution. And I think that was pretty much it from what we had. I may have missed 1 or 2 points.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So I would request the devotees that made these presentations and to group 5, Madhava Prabhu, you could fill in and do that job. That would be good. If you would take the time after our session to write these up nicely. Right now, I've just taken notes, boom, boom, 1, 2, 3, 4 words, etc. And send them in to Vipina Bihari Prabhu in writing, and see if you can do that in the next day or 2. These are all very important topics, and we want to bring them all together into one statement. What I will do is see to it that things are collated together and then sent back to you all so that you have it as a record that this moment in time, in such a short period of time, 5 minutes meditation, 12 or 13 minutes in a group, you came up with, frankly, a comprehensive list of serious things that ISKCON is facing. And that tells us, number one, you've given it a lot of thought in your past. These are things that you are regularly facing. You probably have a certain high degree of frustration that these things continue to exist, and that no one seems to do anything about most of these things. Think about it. So, what does this mean to you as an individual? Basically, what it means is that you should grab hold of one of them or two of them, something that is within your sphere of influence, or something that you feel strongly about, that you feel that you can make a difference, and start doing something about it. Now, whether that something is on a local level or a regional level, or even a global level, if you are bold and strong and Krishna is empowering you, do something about some of this stuff. That's what your mission should be. And even if all you are doing is doing it on a local level, that at least is something of seriousness, something of value. Leadership means so many things. One of the things that leadership means is to add value to the organization. So take this as a sign to you individually, not that you just sit and talk about a problem, but that you actually do something about it. So very important exercise, very well done. I commend you. I salute you. And I offer my obeisances to you. We had so much fun with this that we're going to have to take the next session of today and go through it somewhat quickly. Okay. But I want you to know that comprehensive notes will be sent to you on this next session. So I'm going to be flying through this. Don't think that you have to actually take notes, because notes are going to be offered to you. You spent some time, as Vipin Prabhu has told me, with Konteya Prabhu in the Tirupati session where you talked about strategic planning. Strategic planning means creating a plan. Once you have a plan, you have to now start to execute on that plan. Creating a plan is a science. It's an important science to know. If the plan is not created properly, it increases the opportunity for that plan to fail. But the implementation and the execution of that plan is more difficult than actually even creating the plan. This next session that we're going to go through quickly has something to do with what you can do to create the change that is specified by that plan. So we call this 8 steps of leading change. These 8 steps basically create a sense of urgency, build a guiding coalition, a small group of people, form a vision and a strategy. That's where that strategic thing comes in. Enlist all the necessary people that are needed to create that change, enable them, generate that vision, sustain it, and put it into the institution. 70% of all major change efforts, they just absolutely fail. And actually sometimes in ISKCON, because ISKCON has a certain amount of organizational deficiency, unlike many organizations in the world. Many organizations in the world are much more organized than we are. And you already specified some of the defects in our organization. In ISKCON, plans, maybe 90% fail. Why do they fail? Another lack of a plan, failure to define clear rationale for the change, ignoring culture. In other words, sometimes we have culture that is so embedded that you try to make a change and it just literally gets crushed. Weak follow through by the sponsors, not investing enough resource in those change gaps in the change agent's skills. Some people know that there should be change. Some people make some level of plan. But if the change agent is not skilled, haphazard communication, the fear of feedback. One of the groups made, I think it was group number 5, I can't remember, was saying it's just very poor feedback loop. Well, one of the reasons is very poor feedback loop is because we're afraid to hear it. Okay. And by the way, another group mentioned, actually multiple groups mentioned the lack of communication when we have just gone through such a tremendous last 20 years of change in communication where we can communicate so well. Just imagine what we're doing today. We're at least face to face, we're able to talk. This was unheard of 20 years ago. There's so much communication is going on in the world, and we are not very well communicating. It's amazing. Declaring success too early, neglecting. Okay. So here's the 8 steps. We just do them again. Establishing a sense of urgency. You look at the list of stuff that you just came up with. Incredible list of stuff, and many of these things, frankly, they're urgent. People won't change if there's no sense of urgency to change. So a leader has to be able to take the importance of that change and create a sense of urgency on it. You got to have the right people that are working together on it. You got to have a strong vision and a strategy. Communicating that change to all the people that are affected by it. Empowering others for a broader base of action. Get some short-term wins in addition to the longer term. Some projects take long time, but if you don't generate some short-term wins, people get tired. It's just the nature. And then consolidating those changes and creating anchoring of them into the new culture. Okay. So step number 1, establishing a sense of urgency. We got to express that need for change. We got to show the risks if that change doesn't happen. Just like in this exercise that we did. We spoke about the dangers of not solving these problems, okay? Get a good discussion going, get some outside perspectives, stuff like that. We create that sense of urgency. You got to have the right people. If you have the wrong people, nothing will happen. If all you do is surround yourself with people who think just like you, you're not going to get different points of view. In some cases, if you bring people in that are antagonistic to change, you might end up hurting the effort, okay? Yet on the other side, if you don't bring them in, they're going to stand off to the side and be a detractor to all the things that you're wishing to change. So you have to decide who should be in this group of people that are going to be the center of this change element. Develop a very strong vision and strategy. Of course, we are talking about the science of strategic planning. That is part of this. We're also talking about creating a vision, something that is tangible and something that causes me to be able to see something. Vision means I'm able to see it, I'm able to taste it, I'm able to touch it, etc. Okay. We move to the communication of that change. And the communication of that change is critical. You yourself came up with communication on your list of things. And I think it was at least 3 groups and maybe more that spoke about the lack of communication among leaders, the lack of communication throughout the society. One measurement of communication, way of looking at communication is you need to over communicate because the tendency is to under communicate is so strong. We can't hide from people's concerns. We have to address them honestly. You know, especially if they are representative of a broader group of people. You know, we need to report how that change effort is going. This communication thing, change cannot happen without that communication. This next step is something that ISKCON really struggles with. And that is empowering others to do things. Many leaders in the second and third tiers of ISKCON, they feel that their hands are tied, that they can't do anything. If they attempt to do something, they're going to get crushed. So what leadership has to do is actually identify those change leaders and give them power, give them energy, give them support, allow them to go forward and make those changes. Now, of course, you can't just unleash somebody who's totally unqualified. That is also that actually creates more difficulty than as if you were going to even create change. So it has to be, you have to be smart as to who you're going to empower. Create clarity for that person or those people. Create some level of job description or a clarity of what you're actually expecting, and then be in a position to determine whether it's actually going the way you want it to go. Of course, we're talking you, but right now we're talking about this guiding coalition, this group of people that are working on those changes. The short-term wins are very important, particularly in ISKCON, because in ISKCON, the deficits are so huge. And there are some of the problems of ISKCON, I don't know, it almost seems like they won't change until some people depart from this mortal world, frankly. So in some cases, the plans necessary end up being long-term plans. So to keep the energy flowing, you got to have some short-term wins. You got to create in a bona fide plan to create change. You have to have short-term elements, mid-term elements, and longer-term elements. And then you got to make sure that there's a certain mix there so that everybody is feeling like something is getting done. Number 7 is consolidating those gains and producing more change. So after every win, we sit back and say, okay, what did we do right? What needs improvement, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know if in your strategic planning, you spoke about this PDSA. Have you ever heard about PDSA? Yes, no?
Yes.
You have, okay, fine. So then we won't go into that. But it's a very important aspect of systems thinking, okay? And one plans and does, and then they study what actually happened, and then with that study, you are able to determine whether things are working or not. And then lastly, we want to anchor any new thing that gets accomplished. Once it's accomplished, you anchor it into the existing culture such that then the culture itself starts to change. One thing that we have to understand about culture is a saying, I don't know if you've heard it, culture trumps strategy all day long. So you can come up with great ideas, great plans, but if you don't address how you're going to change the culture, and what is culture? I mean, I think you probably spent some time studying culture with Contea. He's kind of a culture man.
Yes.
Yes.
You know, briefly, and he has a little bit different approach to culture than I do. There's a little background noise. I like the notion of culture of belief, behavior, and norm. I like that one. Why? Because people's fundamental belief causes them to behave in a certain way, and repeated behavior creates norms. This is the way things are, okay? Because everybody or many people act like this, and they're acting like this because they believe in that, okay? So when we become cultural engineers, because to be a leader means many things, and one of the things it means is to become a cultural engineer. We have to re-engineer the culture. And re-engineering the culture means that we have to change some beliefs. I'll give you a very, very prevalent belief in ISKCON that many people have, which is it's impossible to change ISKCON. It's impossible to make ISKCON better. That's a fundamental belief that we have to deal with. You may have to deal with that even in your own belief structure. I'm not talking about the belief that Krishna is God. I'm not talking about the belief that Srila Prabhupada is our founder Acharya and a pure devotee who came and started this movement. I'm talking about the belief within the functional world. It is very hard to change, to create change in ISKCON. And many people believe that you can't, okay? And that belief is based on, in some places or in some experiences, good. But once you have a belief, you then begin to behave. And that behavior then manifests and what would you say? It solidifies that belief structure. You know, we also have publicly recognizing the key members of the Change Coalition and create plans to replace key leaders of change as they move on, etc. This end part of this, I got a Hare Krishna and then glories to Srila Prabhupada. But I'm going to go back to the beginning and spend a little time here talking about the big opportunity. When you create a plan for change, many, many different things can come into play. And as we spoke, you have to have some short-term goals that make people feel good and make people feel energized. You have to have some midterm. And you have to have long-term. But if you can find one big idea, one big change, that if that change were to take place, it would have huge ramifications. Then you also take that big idea, that singular big idea, and you work hard on that one also. Because that big opportunity has the biggest amount of payoff. So, any questions on the process of leading a change? Again, the PowerPoints, and then well, I'll ask you if you have any questions in a minute, but I just wanted to show you one thing real quick. Just give me a second. When I said that I would send you notes and that you didn't have to take notes, I'm just going to scan real quick the notes that I have for you on this change. And you can see that there's lots of notes on everything that I said. Plus, there's a lot of stuff in here that is more than what I said. And I actually have my daughter to thank that she put all these notes together for me as she heard me speak about these on a number of occasions. So give some credit to her. So all of the PowerPoint and those notes will be shared with you in the upcoming days. So questions on anything that we've spoken about in this hour and what is it, hour and 40 minutes?
Gopal Bhatta, Prabhu.
Yes.
Thank you for your time. Nice to hear from you.
Hare Krishna.
I did have a question, but you answered it. But I thought it's a nice comment to highlight anyway. Many times we, at least I'll speak for myself, and when we're talking leadership and discussing strategic planning, we come up with problems, we come up with solutions, and then we always get frustrated, or at least I always, mostly always get frustrated that it doesn't ever seem that we will ever get a voice, you know, until, like you said, maybe anyway, we won't get a voice. The change is very, very difficult. But I appreciated what you said, and you brought that kind of idea back down to earth, which is whatever field that we're working in, and whatever inspiration we have, pick one or two things and just go hungry after that. So that gave me a nice perspective and an actionable perspective. So I just wanted to highlight that. That's all.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have to be smart in choosing what we're going to try to change. Especially in ISKCON, you have to be smart deciding what you're going to change, because you're going to come up against some powerful people entrenched. Just like one of the things that was spoken about are the positions. People are so attached. I think this was group number 2, maybe.
Group 1.
Group 1, yeah, group 1 spoke of how attached our leaderships are, how powerful they are, how impossible it is to go up against them. You have to be very smart to create change in ISKCON. You should also understand, ISKCON, conceptually speaking, is extraordinarily broad and deep. There is no end to the amount of opportunity within ISKCON. But you can't just look at ISKCON in some smaller way, my temple, my city, whatever, okay? The opportunities are everywhere to do something to either spread Krishna consciousness or to take care of devotees. So Rasha Shrai, Prabhu, you have your hand up, yes?
Yeah, Prabhu, you appreciated today what are the good points you found today. So all these points we are going to take and find the solution in the strategy planning. We are going to use all these points and find the solutions.
The exercise was designed to get the brain working actively into perceiving the future. It wasn't designed to identify all the problems and then now we're going to go and solve them all. these problems are so thick and they run so deep in ISKCON that not easy to change. What you have to do is you have to commit your life to changing ISKCON towards something closer to what Srila Prabhupada actually wants. If we were to take Srila Prabhupada's vision of ISKCON and truly understand it in detail, and then we were to judge ISKCON against that vision that Srila Prabhupada has, then we can say, at least I would say, that we have a whole lot of work to do because we are pretty far away. And the trajectory that we are on is downward, not upward. So the purpose of the exercise was just illuminate that ISKCON needs a tremendous amount of help. So no, we're not ready to tackle all these problems. What we should do is, the value of the exercise was to keep ever present in our mind that we have to, as leaders, be thinking about the future and thinking about the problems that have to be solved to have a better future. I'm going to speak figuratively, not factually. Figuratively speaking, you can consider, in one sense, that you should not actually be a member of today's ISKCON. That you should be a member of a future ISKCON that has yet to manifest. And that manifestation, hang on for one moment. I'm just on a Zoom and I'll ring you in about 15 minutes. Okay, bye. And that future ISKCON is that ISKCON which is far closer to Srila Prabhupada's vision for ISKCON. Be a member of that ISKCON. While at the same time you're a member of this ISKCON, the one that's here in front of us right now. But be more of a member of this future ISKCON that is closer to what Srila Prabhupada wants. Be that member also and work toward it. Any other comments, questions? We're about ready to end. Okay, I'll offer a couple closing comments, actually similar to this notion of be a member of that future ISKCON. You are an inheritor. You are inheriting a portion of ISKCON. You are being given not just the gift of Krishna consciousness, but you are being given an inheritance of ISKCON, and you have to treasure that inheritance, and you have to honor it, and you have to work for it. You have to work for a better ISKCON. So that's your position in life. You have inherited a portion of ISKCON to take care of it on behalf of His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. So take up that with your life, as well as then following the lifestyle of devotional service. And now then you'll really be successful. Okay, so Vipin Prabhu, that's it for today.
Okay, Prabhuji. Thank you, Prabhuji. So we will meet tomorrow at same time.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for a very nice session.
Jai
Hare
Hare Bol.
Krishna. Thank you very much.